Hey there, good morning. Hey, you know what? I'm not actually on the International Space Station, though you see that behind me. That's a photo of the ISS. But I have been in the ISS through virtual reality. I actually downloaded a program that's free for the Oculus Quest 2 and floated around virtually in space, uh, watching videos at different stations where astronauts told me how they brushed their teeth, how they washed their hair, where you did experiments, where you look at the actual ISS as it truly looks and you float through the space station. It turned out I wasn't actually looking down at the Earth because it's beautiful or I wanted to see what it's like to be an astronaut. It turns out I was not actually learning anything new for its own sake. It turns out I was seeking the dopamine rush. How do I know that? Well, because I just read an article from the New York Times that characterizes people that want to experience VR as somehow trying to escape the real world, but even more, it's all chemical based, and we're looking for a dopamine high. Well, here, let me prove it. So I'm going to share this article with you. It just struck me as odd. There we are. And it's called One Man's Endless Hunt for a Dopamine Rush in Virtual Reality. Let me read little sections of this to you and sort of comment on it. So on a recent Thursday evening at the City Life Community Center in Missoula, Montana, Wolf Heffelfinger played laser tag. Wearing a pair of heavy goggles, he bobbed across the gymnasium, firing FOD laser guns with both hands. It was not all that different from any other game of laser tag, except he was playing in virtual reality. As he and a friend raced around the gym, he saw himself sprinting down the neon lit quarters of a spacecraft. So did his friend. With virtual reality goggles strapped over their eyes, they could not see each other, but they could chase each other in an imaginary world. For Mr. Heffelfinger, a 48-year-old musician, entrepreneur, and free spirit, this game was another step in a decade-long obsession with virtual reality. An obsession, not an interest, it's an obsession. There's a big difference. Since the arrival of the seminal Oculus headset in 2013, he's played games in virtual reality, watched movies, visited distant lands, and assumed new identities. Sounds like fun. He sees his virtual adventures as a relentless search for the dopamine rush that comes when the technology takes him somewhere new. When he reaches the edge of what the technology can do, the rush wanes. He has put his many headsets on the shelf where they have sat for months, but when advances arrive, he leaps back in. You know, I didn't start gaming on PCs until I was in my early 30s. When in the 1980s, the 90s, with all those, the first Nintendo game sets, what have you, I was totally not interested in that. I got my first computer in 1985, a Radio Shack Model 4. We can talk about that. I will. And I used it for writing. I used it for actual productivity. But then one day, I upgraded to an IBM 286. It had color. It had a color screen. Now, I thought that I was just enjoying advances in color in the same way that when you had a black and white TV, you went and got a color TV when they came out. I put my black and white computer aside. I thought it was because advances technology made it more attractive to use the machine. It turned out no, the dopamine rush had ended. All right. Then I got my first 386, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Mr. Heffeljigger's on and off preoccupation synchronizes the tech industry's on and off affair with virtual reality, investing billions in a concept that has for several years appeared just a few steps from going mainstream without quite getting there. Well, that's true, isn't it? I mean, isn't that true of all new technology? Were the first cars mainstream when the first horseless buggies, horseless carriages came out? Did people sort of flock to them right away? No, they were too expensive. They were too hard to use. But VR apparently is different. There is a question, however, if virtual reality is truly ready for mainstream consumers. Over the years, improvements have never quite matched expectations. It's as if science fiction, decades of novels, movies, and television about virtual reality, has set people up for perpetual disappointment. I want it to be part of my life, and I always think it will be, Mr. Heffelfinger said, but the dream always ends. Really? Have people been expecting the holodeck from Star Trek Next Generation? Have we been experiencing or expecting that this brand new medium was going to be something that we could all just jump into? I don't know. I think the expectations are unrealistic here. As Mr. Heffelfinger prepared for his game of laser tag in the Mazzoli Community Center, a group of teenagers were playing paintball one floor down. It was largely the same game: goggles, fog guns, and pursuit around a gym, but the teenagers remained in the real world. When asked why he did not just sign up for a game of old-fashioned paintball, Mr. Heffelfinger said playing in a world of science fiction made all the difference. He enjoyed being taken away. I can enter the movie, he said. I don't know about you, but I think the fastest way to kill teenagers' fun is to have dad, or when I'm at age 60, grandpa, jump in the game. Hey, kids, can I join you? Hey, and watch your language. No bad words when I'm playing with you. It just destroys everything. Kids don't want old men or guys in their 40s and 50s jumping in and playing. It just changes the dynamics of everything, and they're not having fun. And quite frankly, wouldn't it be a little bit weird? Hey, kids, mind if I join you? Hey, don't mind my van outside. I don't know. There's just something strange about the idea. I work with much, much younger people, 40 years younger than me. We have a great working relationship, right? Do I ever say, hey, kids, can I come hang out with you after work? Hell no. But here's something else that struck me. He could even be a different person, as he and his friend John Brownell booted up the game called Space Pirate Arena. Mr. Heffelfinger chose a big, beefy, ostentatiously masculine avatar dressed in camouflage. Ostentatiously masculine avatar. Doesn't that sort of have a ring of like somebody dresses in leather? Got a little fetish there. You're ostentatiously masculine. Okay, well, oh, but Mr. Brownell chose one that looked a lot like the actress Angelina Jolie. Mr. Heffelfinger imagined himself in a dystopian world. An episode of Black Mirror flashed through my mind, where these two guys fall in love with each other in VR by choosing different avatars, he said, referring to a science fiction series on Netflix. I don't think he realized the effect this had on me. Oh, what effect did it have on him? Is this implying that latent homosexual tendencies may come out? One guy dresses ostentatiously masculine, and the other guy chooses to look like an attractive woman, and they're hanging out together. What's coming out of their internal psyches? VR will bring this out. Mr. Heffelfinger craves something called lucid dreaming. Something called lucid dreaming? Doesn't everybody know what lucid dreaming is? Isn't there an implication this is some sort of odd, another weird thing that somebody who likes VR might be interested in? He once made a short film about the elusive phenomena where dreams are experienced with complete consciousness, a bit like the enormously detailed, completely convincing dreams in Hollywood films like Inception and Vanilla Sky. When he found virtual reality, he realized it provided the same feeling. After a while, your brain plays a trick on you, he said. You believe you are really there. Perhaps. Not really. I just recently posted a video of myself yakking about a subject that matters to me while I play a representational world mini golf. In no way am I convinced that I'm actually standing in this vast, greatly designed world. It doesn't look real. It isn't real. Real world physics, a lot of fun and also frustrating. Golf, I don't understand why people do it except to drive themselves crazy. Still, I don't think it really convinced me it was in the real world. So it goes on to talk about how he first discovered virtual reality at an Oculus test as an Oculus test kit test user. And he visited Egyptian pyramids. He watched Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey in a virtual reality while suspended in a float tank. Okay, well, that's a little extreme. He basically found ways to use this to enhance the actual world by visiting the virtual world. And here's where we go. The nature of these fantasy worlds is they feed dopamine into the reward pathways of our brains, said Anna Lembke, a Stanford University psychiatrist and the author of Dopamine Nation, an exploration of addiction in the modern world. They carry the potential for addiction. But as with other addictions, tolerances are developed. Reaching the dopamine high gets harder. So my first thought upon reading that sentence was, do we do that with other forms of entertainment? So when I was reading books as a child, it turned out I wasn't entering Robin Hood's world, Robin Hood and his merry men. I wasn't reading Huck Finn to learn or enjoy the experiences of Huckleberry on his adventures. No, it turned out I was looking for a dopamine high. I was looking for a fantasy world to feed that reward pathway in my brain. And then came movies, the movies that have attracted us through all of our lives. You're not temporarily jumping into an alternate world with a story and characters you care about or learn to care about. You're looking for a dopamine high, apparently. The women who, to go back to books for a moment, I remember going to used bookstores, searching for Philip K. Dick novels. That was sort of fun. That was the way I discovered a new place. I would go to the different bookstores, and my excuse was to look for Philip Dick novels that I did not own. This is obviously pre-Amazon, pre-Barnes and Noble, being able to order things on demand. And there was that fun of finding a book I didn't have or another copy of one I had that might be in better condition. But I do remember the women coming in with bags and bags of romance novels that they would trade in. They'd get a credit for these and they'd trade them in for others. And so it was a way for them to live in this virtual world where, men who had Fabio bodies and cowboys and what have you, were seeking them, were after them. I guess that was just a dopamine high. In that case, it might be true. It might be a good point. Anyway, it turns out that a walk outside is much more fun, Mr. Huffenfinger says. Well, yes, it can be more fun. Yes, it can. But let's say you live in a cold climate, and let's say you can't walk outside during the winter without risking your death of freezing. Or maybe you don't want to walk in 2 feet of snow. Maybe you're not physically capable of doing it. It's not either or. It's not, hey, I'm not going to go outside because I have a VR headset, which is the implication there. So maybe I should walk outside. That's more fun. Well, it can be, unless it's raining or freezing or too hot, or you're physically incapable of doing that for any length of time. The VR headset makes a nice alternative. But he always bought another set of goggles. In other words, that one drug just wasn't enough. You had to get the next one. Now, this one struck me. So he visited virtual recreation of Burning Man, the annual Bohemian Art Festival with a female friend. Okay. As they strolled through the desert campsites among the art installations, sculptures, and souped-up cars and trucks, Mr. Heffelfinger got the uneasy feeling that he, a married man, was on a date with someone who was not his wife. We'd hung out a million times in real life, and it never felt like a date, he said. She makes herself much prettier in VR. Oh my gosh. Well, in this case, yes, I would say you just made a mistake. You're married and you're strolling through a virtual reality with a female friend and you comment, hey, she looks pretty good. You know what? Yes, your wife might have cause to be upset with you. And the article goes on to say, later he told his wife what had happened. And as a way of making amends, he bought her a headset, invited her into virtual reality. He should have done that first. Yes. As they walked into a virtual cocktail bar, he heard the voice of the woman he had taken to Burning Man, and she approached them from across the room. Can we not go anywhere without one of your females showing up, his wife said, before her avatar retreated into the distance and went limp. She had taken off her headset. It was a bizarre and unexpected mix of the real and the virtual. In the past, the three of them had spent time together in the real world. He knew that would not happen again. Okay, you made a mistake, Mr. Heffelfinger. I'm sorry, man. But that really was sort of a virtual cheating affair. I was disgusted with the VR, he said, but now I'm back. It was part of me. He will probably get bored again. Like many people who use the technology, he believes many more years will pass before it becomes an unshakable part of everyday life. And he admits that no matter how good the technology gets, he is wary of spending too much time there. I like going into virtual reality, he said, but I always want to come out. So the whole thing about this article is that it struck me as disparaging. There's an implication that your latent homosexual tendencies may come out. And why don't you just jump out and go play with teenagers instead of with other adults perhaps your age? The whole stance of the article to me seems to be wrong. Here's why I have embraced virtual reality and why I really enjoy playing with it. And here, let's stop that. So it really struck me as the weird thing about this article was it stands that somehow virtual reality is this odd affair where it's really akin to having a chemical dependency. Well, I don't see that at all. How about a world where we can get together virtually and chat with each other and we can erode national boundaries? I don't have to go to India. I don't have to go to Russia. I don't have to go to Nigeria. In theory, if I wanted to, I could use any number of the VR chat apps where you go into a virtual environment and you can talk to people from around the world. What's the one reason that it's so easy to go around killing others? Well, because we don't know them. They're the others. They're strange. They're threatening. Well, not if you're chatting with them in VR world. Another great advantage is education. There's a brand new program out. I just read about it on a channel called Steve Knows. Read about it, watched it. And it's fetal heart surgery. The program's like $250, but you can literally practice how to do surgery on babies' hearts. I don't particularly want to do that, but it's very, very useful for people that are in the medical profession. And you're not actually having to operate on a baby's heart. You're doing something very akin to it. $250 is dirt cheap for that. You can learn all sorts of new experiences. For instance, me floating through the ISS gave me a great appreciation for one, how really tiny it is. You see all those wires and what have you behind me? Well, when you're floating through that world, you get an appreciation for that is not really a great home environment. We have a ways to go. But not everyone can be 90-year-old William Shatner. God bless Jeff Bezos. What a great public relations move. I didn't like Jeff Bezos. I saw him as, the real life Lex Luthor. He's got the muscles up, he's got the bald head, he has more money than God. But he's sending William Shatner, Captain Kirk, into space. All right, I like him a lot more now. But not just education. There's also the real world exercise. There's any number of exercise programs you can do. And, it's one thing to be standing in my living room trying to do calisthenics. But how about if I go into the world of Skyrim, which is a virtual reality world? The original game came out in 2011. And it's just a fantasy world, richly detailed. The people that love Skyrim rightly love it. I was bored. I'm not into games with dragons and swords and that kind of stuff. I prefer firepower like the Fallout series. But then I got Skyrim VR. And it's one thing to be looking at somebody trying to sell you things standing on the other side of a table. It's another to see that person, life size, looking directly at you. It's one thing to see a dragon fly overhead or to land in front of you and have dust pop up on your screen. It's another to see and feel virtually with the sound, the dragon, its wings, it's the weight of it, much more immersive. I even had a situation where I was just amazed at when I first started playing the game, and I'm standing there looking at a woman walking past me, and I'm just really admiring the detail of the game. It's like, wow, this looks so much better. She turns and says to me, "Keep your eyes to yourself. I'm a spoken for woman." And I was like, oh my God, I've just been turned down in the VR world. The greatest thing about my introduction to Skyrim VR, and then after that, all the other games that are involving exercise, is Skyrim is a vast world. And on the computer version or the console version, you just push a key button, a WSAD, and walk through that world. In the VR world, you can run through it. I mean, literally run with some simple mods that are easily added onto the game. You actually physically move through that world. And if you're clever, you get yourself a treadmill, preferably a motorized one, so you can get all the exercise you want by not teleporting and not pressing a key, but by literally running through that world. I put up a video a couple days ago about an alpha version game. Alpha means extremely early, and it's just jogging through a loosely rendered environment. It's good enough. So rather than sitting on your increasingly fat butt, moving nothing except your fingers, you're actually physically moving through the world. You're literally swinging your arms, fighting a dragon, fighting other people, fighting the bad guys. You're immersed and exercising far more than you might normally because it's interesting. Are you escaping real life? Well, in a sense, yeah. But we do that every time you read a book or watch a movie, as I've said earlier. In other words, I embrace VR. I embrace its potential to expand our lives, to embrace our physical fitness, to increase the immersiveness of us with other people around the world. I do believe that VR can make it increasingly less common for soldiers to be sent into the world to kill other people. I embrace it for enhancing our humanity, not escaping from it. If you agree with this, or if you have some comments, you want to disagree with it, let me know. And hit like on this video if you enjoy it. Consider subscribing. I'll keep producing new content, some tech related, some not. Look forward to talking to you again.